Welcome friends, welcome back to Sunday morning in the Old Cookbook Show. Today we're going to do another recipe out of the Lorain Cooking Cookbook. This is the 1928 edition. The first edition was in 1924. And this was put out by the American Stove Company to trumpet their invention of the Lorraine oven heat regulator. They applied for a patent in 1921. It was granted in 1922. And essentially what it did was allow their ovens to be set to a certain temperature and then maintain that temperature through the entire cook. And this cookbook states that it is undoubtedly the first cookbook devoted exclusively to time and temperature oven cooking, which is probably quite true. A lot of our cookbooks, even into the 1940s, didn't give an oven temperature or an oven cooking time. It just said put it in a hot oven or a slow oven and cook it until it's done. So today we're going to do what is essentially a cornmeal pudding. And it starts out with a pint of milk. And so this is a US pint. It took me a while to find an American measuring cup, but I found one. So I've got 1 pint of milk, and here I've got a pot with some barely simmering water in it and a glass bowl. I've essentially made a double boiler. So in goes the milk, and then the cornmeal. And we just want to stir this in and cook it for about 15 minutes in order to soften up the cornmeal. Okay, while this is cooking, I needed to prepare a couple of other things. So I've got a roasting pan in a preheated oven filled with about 1 inch of water in the bottom, and we're going to use that as a bain-marie to cook the pudding in. And then it needs 2 eggs well beaten that are going to be added to the double boiler. So let's just beat those up and get them ready. Okay, so at this point, everything else just gets stirred into the double boiler. So we've got white sugar, a lump of butter, and that will melt, some salt, cinnamon, ground ginger, some nutmeg, and about 3 tablespoons of molasses. You could measure if you want to. I'm just going to free pour. I think I can figure out 3 tablespoons. There you go. And I'm using fancy molasses. You could use cooking molasses, blackstrap molasses, as deep or dark the flavor that you want to go. I think fancy works probably with this recipe because a lot of the other flavors are a little bit delicate. So we're going to stir this in, get everything incorporated, get that butter melted before I put in the egg. Now the recipe doesn't say anything about tempering the egg. And you know, one thing that I know about cooking is that anytime you add raw egg into a hot liquid and you don't want it to curdle or cook or scramble, you're supposed to temper it. So the recipe doesn't say anything about that. And based on this cookbook, I think it's the kind of cookbook that would tell you to do every step because these are some of the best instructions I've seen in a cookbook from this time period. But I'm just gonna drizzle it in really slowly. I'm gonna whisk furiously, drizzle in the egg slowly, hope for the best and see what happens. Now it's already thickening up in the bowl, and essentially this is just a spiced custard with some cornmeal in it. And I think the cornmeal is just to give it a little bit of body and bite. Now very carefully take the bowl out. The water underneath will be hot, there'll be steam. I really wish that I had an actual true double boiler with 2 pots and a handle. That would make this so much simpler. Okay, greased baking dish, and we just want to pour this in without burning ourselves and spilling everywhere. Okay, so there's the cornmeal. It's all sort of clumped at the bottom. Maybe give it a little bit of a mix to distribute it around in there so it's not clumped. Now, cover it with some tin foil, and then it goes into the oven in a bain-marie for 3 hours.
Ooh, it's the big reveal.
Hey,
The
Jules.
big reveal. Hi, Glen. Hi, friends. That is fascinating.
So it's a cornmeal pudding. Yeah, it's a little bit hot. It's essentially a custard with cornmeal in it.
Jiggly.
It's jiggly.
And it looks really spicy. Not spicy, hot spicy, but it looks like it's, kind of cinnamony. Maybe?
Well, yeah, there's cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, there's molasses. You're supposed to eat it hot.
Okay, that's the way I like to eat puddings, so.
And it says to eat it either with plain cream or whipped cream.
I'm just going to try it as is for
I'm
now.
going to try it as is too.
Thank you.
So it is pretty loose. Here's a spoon. But it smells wonderful,
It has all those
doesn't
wonderful
it?
spice.
Yeah.
It's got a spice cakey smell to it.
Yeah.
Still hot though. It melts in your mouth.
It
Like
does.
there's no.
Yeah.
It's like you just put flavor in your mouth and nothing else.
Nothing else. It's
And in this case, hot.
but it's interesting. When I poured it in, I gave it a stir because I thought, oh, the cornmeal has sort of
You thought there'd be a crust.
and the cornmeal has settled to the bottom. So there's like a bottom of cornmeal.
I guess but when you scoop it out, it doesn't really. It's super soft.
So the flavor is quite nice.
I can imagine in a cream it would be.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of cream here. There is some oil here, and that's the butter has separated.
And is that you or is that? You know what I mean? Like, is that? I wonder if that's what it's just that's how it works.
I don't. Well, that's the thing. I don't know. I've never had this before. With cream, it's quite nice.
It's dishy and pleasant.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna try.
So, when I started making this, I thought, it would probably be really good with grits. Instead of cornmeal, don't look at the cheesecake.
I know you said we have to wait.
We have to wait for the
wait till
cheese.
it cools. Julie has a tendency to burn her mouth.
In case you're wondering what this is, we made homemade cream cheese, and then we turned it into a Basque cheesecake.
So I'm very excited about the cheesecake.
That's coming up, but it's not yet.
Of course, right now I'm enjoying this.
So I thought grits. I thought grits would give a better texture than cornmeal.
I don't think I understand. Like the thick. You mean instead of using like
So to
the
me,
grittier grits
well,
versus.
to me, grits are made from hominy, which is corn that's been nixtamized or soaked in lye. So it changes the texture. And so when you have grits in the South, it's usually hominy grits or nixtamized corn. Whereas what we get here is cornmeal is just ground corn. I like the flavor, I like the texture, but I could, it's kind of take it or leave it. I don't love it enough that I'd make it a second time. Or I don't love it enough that I'd make it a second time exactly this way. I would probably cut back on the butter.
And yet I finished mine, so.
I'd cut back on the butter and I would try it with grits. But I think, as an introduction to a different idea in pudding.
And I'm super fascinated how it just melts, like
Yeah.
it doesn't exist in my mouth. Like yeah. I wonder what that combination is that makes it do that.
So this is interesting. And so this is not something that was ever in my family growing up. I don't remember anything like this.
No.
If this is something that your family ate,
Tell us more.
please tell us. Let us know how you make it, or how your mother made it, or your grandmother made it, because I'm very interested to find out. So, thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.